What if we've misunderstood what it truly means to be strong? For centuries, we've carved strength into stone statues and battle cries. The warrior, as we've been told, is the one who charges forward, who strikes fear, who conquers, crushes, and walks away untouched, the hero dripping in armor and invincibility. But something's wrong with that picture. It's hollow. Because if strength is measured by who destroys the most, why does it feel so empty? Why do the people we actually admire, the ones who move us, rarely look anything like that myth? Maybe we've glorified the wrong kind of warrior. Maybe the real warrior isn't the one who wins battles, but the one who refuses to let others lose themselves. Heraclitus said, of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are real fighters. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. He didn't say the one who charges first. He didn't say the one who kills the most. He said the one who brings others back. Back from chaos. Back from pain. Back from the edge. That one is the warrior. And yet, that version of strength doesn't get paraded in movies or printed on posters. Because it's not loud, it's not glamorous, it doesn't wear a cape. It wears exhaustion, it wears empathy, it wears quiet. Because this kind of strength feels everything. It doesn't detach, it doesn't run from the weight, it carries it. It's not the kind of strength that crushes, it's the kind that holds others up when they're falling apart. We're taught to keep a distance, to armor up emotionally, to not feel too much, because if you feel too much, you might break. But maybe numbness isn't strength. Maybe numbness is just surrender with better branding. Real warriors don't run from the fire. They run into it with open eyes and an open heart, because someone's trapped inside, and they're the only one who can bring them back. Xenophon didn't become a legend by leading a charge. He became one by guiding 10,000 men stranded in enemy territory, home. No glory, no throne, just grit and loyalty and the will to carry others when they couldn't carry themselves. We remember Achilles, but we survive because of Xenophon. We remember the flash of the sword, but we live because of the shield that never dropped. We remember the conquest, but we become whole because someone came back for us. Because only 1 in 100 is willing to carry that weight. There's a moment in every storm when someone has to decide whether to run with the crowd or turn back for the one who's been left behind. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic, it happens in an instant. And that decision defines everything. Heraclitus didn't just hand us a poetic quote, he gave us a challenge. He told us the truth that we avoid because it's uncomfortable. That most people freeze, most people flee, most people follow. But one will step forward. The one who leads without needing to be followed. The one who feels the fear and goes anyway. The one who stays present when detachment would be so much easier. And that's the part we rarely talk about, how tempting it is to check out, to shut it all down. Because to bring others back, you have to stay connected. You have to feel the panic, the grief, the weight of every single life depending on you, and not flinch. The real warrior doesn't armor up his heart. He walks with it exposed. Because he knows numbness is a trap. Detachment might make you appear composed, but it kills your ability to care. And without care, there's no leadership, just motion. Welles Crowther didn't have a badge. He didn't have authority. He had a red bandana and a decision. Inside the South Tower, when smoke filled the stairwells and fear crushed the air, Welles carried a woman down 17 flights, handed her off, and went back up. Again and again. He kept going back. He didn't do it because he was trained to. He did it because someone had to. Survivors say his voice was steady, his eyes were clear, his words were simple. Follow me, I'll get you out. That's it. No speech, no drama, just leadership when it mattered most. Welles didn't survive that day, but many others did because in a tower full of panic, he chose presence, he chose action, he chose to bring others back. And that's what Robin Sharma meant when he said, you can lead without a title. Because titles don't save lives, heart does, will does, presence does. The warrior isn't the one who moves the fastest. He's the one who stays when no one else will. the one who makes sure someone else gets through the darkness, even if he doesn't. And that kind of strength doesn't show up with fanfare. It shows up as a quiet hand reaching through the smoke. It shows up as a steady voice saying, "You're not alone." It shows up as the one who brings them back, because only 1 in 100 is willing to carry that weight. Leadership is heavy, not in the way a crown is heavy, not in the way a title is complicated. It's heavy because when you choose to bring others back, you carry more than your own weight. You carry theirs too, and no one sees that part. We celebrate the outcome, not the cost. We cheer the survivors, but forget the one who stayed awake all night just to keep them breathing. We admire the strength, but we rarely ask what it took to hold it all together. The real warrior carries what others can't. And what makes that even harder is that he feels all of it. He doesn't turn it off. He doesn't get to check out or shut down. He walks with the fear, the uncertainty, the guilt, the second guessing, and still leads, still acts, still shows up. There's a boy, 8 years old. His name is Tyler Miller. One night, his dad collapses. His little sister starts crying. No one else is around, no grown-up to take control, no roadmap, just him. And in that moment, he becomes the one. He calls for help, he gives instructions, he comforts his sister, and he doesn't fall apart. Not until after, because that's when it hits, the weight. Not of what happened, but of what could have. The burden of knowing, even at 8 years old, that you had to be the one. And that's something no child should have to carry. But that's what warriors do. They carry what no one else should have to. Marshal Michel Ney, in Napoleon's retreat from Russia, had every reason to save himself. He had power, he had rank, he had an exit. But he stayed at the rear, shielding his broken army, fighting for every mile, watching men freeze to death and refusing to abandon them. They called him the bravest of the brave. But bravery isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's a whisper in your own mind that says, keep going, even if no one sees you, even if no one ever thanks you, just keep going. I've sat with people who didn't know how to keep going. I've watched someone I love sit on the edge of giving up, and I didn't have the right words. I didn't have the answers, but I stayed. I stayed when it was uncomfortable, when I felt helpless, when I didn't know what else to do. And that's when I understood. Being the one isn't about having the perfect plan. It's about staying, bearing witness, carrying the weight, even when it's invisible. And sometimes, especially when it's invisible. Because we don't get to pick the burdens, but we do get to choose whether we carry them. And the real warrior chooses, every time, even when it hurts, even when it isolates him, even when the armor he wears isn't made of steel but of silence, and a heart held together by threads. Because only 1 in 100 is willing to carry that weight. Everyone talks about surviving the battle. No one talks about surviving the peace. When the fire dies down, when the threat is gone, when the job is done, that's when it gets quiet. And in that quiet, the weight settles. Because the warrior doesn't walk away unscarred. Not even close. Some wounds don't bleed. They echo, they wake you up at night, they sit in the back of your throat when someone says thank you, and you don't know how to accept it. Because they weren't there when it broke you. We think coming home is simple. You cross the finish line, take off the armor, return to normal life. But what if you don't remember who you were before the fight? What if the fire changed you? What if the part of you that got others through didn't come back with you? The ancients knew this. The Native American tribes brought their warriors back in ceremony, not to celebrate, but to cleanse. To help them release the weight, the memories, the shadows. They understood that survival isn't the same as healing. Because sometimes when you survive something, part of you stays in it. And if no one comes to get you out, if no one makes space for your return, you start to believe the war is the only place you belong. Odysseus didn't take 10 years to come home because he was weak. He took 10 years because coming back is its own journey. Because the war wasn't just something he left behind, it was something inside him. And that's true for anyone who's ever carried others through a storm. You get used to holding it all together. And then one day you're standing in the sunlight with no more fires to fight, and it feels foreign. It feels wrong, because no one told you how to rest, how to be, how to let go. So instead, you stay detached. Not because you want to, because you're afraid that if you open the door, everything you locked away will come rushing back. But healing isn't about pretending it never happened. Healing is about making peace with the part of you that survived. And that requires courage, more courage than the battle ever did. Because facing the pain when the adrenaline is gone, that's a different kind of bravery. That's why the warrior must eventually become the healer. Not just for others, for himself. He has to learn how to feel again, how to reconnect, how to trust softness without flinching, because numbness may have kept him alive, but it won't let him live. And that's the final act of warriorship, to come back whole, to reclaim the part of himself that believed in peace. Because only 1 in 100 is willing to carry that weight. And the real warrior, he carries it all the way home. What the warrior does in the fight matters, but what he does after, that's what defines his legacy. Because any fool can burn something down, but only a true warrior knows how to build something that lasts. Ashoka the Great had everything. An empire, power, victory. But after the massacre of Kalinga, after over 100,000 lives were lost by his command, he stood among the dead and didn't feel triumph. He felt grief. He felt the full weight of what he'd done. And in that moment, he chose a different kind of strength. He didn't go back to war. He went to work healing what he had broken. He built roads, hospitals, schools. He spread compassion. He carved messages of peace and humanity into stone across the empire. Not because he wanted to be remembered, but because he knew he had a responsibility to create a future better than the past he had helped destroy. That's what legacy really is. It's not in the fire you start, it's in the seeds you plant after the smoke clears. But our world is still addicted to the fire. We celebrate the moment of conquest, but not the cost of return. We build statues for victories, but forget the hands that carried others through the wreckage. We glorify destruction as proof of strength, but we whisper about healing as if it's weakness. We tell boys to be warriors, and then forget to tell them what that really means. It means restraint, it means building, it means turning power into purpose. Musashi, the greatest swordsman in Japan, wrote in his final days that true mastery is found not in drawing the blade, but in choosing not to. He had spent his life surviving duels, sharpening skill, and in the end, he used that clarity to teach peace. Because the sword, he realized, was only ever a tool. The real weapon was wisdom. And that wisdom is what the real warrior passes down. Not anger, not vengeance, but clarity, compassion, stability. Cincinnatus saved Rome in its moment of crisis. He was offered the throne, unlimited power, and he said no. He walked away, back to his farm, back to his family, because leadership wasn't his identity, it was his responsibility. And once that responsibility was fulfilled, he let go. Because the greatest warriors don't cling to the battlefield. They step back so others can step forward. The legacy of the warrior is not in the medals on his chest, but in the people who can breathe, build, and dream because of what he carried. It's in the communities that heal because he chose to serve. It's in the generation that grows up safe because he never stopped showing up. I think about the quiet ones who carried me, the ones who said little, did much, and stayed longer than they had to. They weren't flashy, they weren't loud, but they showed me something that still shapes me today. That real warriors leave something behind, not to be remembered, but to make others stronger. Because only 1 in 100 is willing to carry that weight. And the one who does, leaves a world behind him that doesn't need another war. Now it's your turn. Not later, not when you've figured it all out, not when you feel ready. Now, because the warrior isn't chosen, he chooses. And when the moment comes, and it always comes, it won't feel like a battlefield. It'll look like a kitchen table, a hospital hallway, a text message at midnight, a trembling voice that says, "I don't know if I can do this anymore." That's when you'll know. That's when the world will go quiet and a question will rise inside you. Will you be the one? Will you be the one who stays when walking away is easier? Will you be the one who says, "Follow me," when no one else has the map? Will you be the one who feels everything but still steps forward? Because numbness isn't strength. Detachment isn't leadership. You don't inspire people by cutting yourself off from them. You lead them by staying present, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Sometimes being a warrior means being the hand that reaches through the fire. Sometimes it means being the anchor in someone else's storm. Sometimes it means carrying the grief no one else knows how to hold. Sometimes it means being the teenager who notices a classmate on the edge, sitting beside them, not with answers, just presence, just love, just the kind of quiet, ordinary courage that saves lives every day without ever making a sound. That's warriorship. That's leadership. And it doesn't come with applause. It comes with meaning. It comes with knowing that someone stood because you refused to let them fall. It comes with knowing that someone found their way because you didn't leave them behind. Be the one. Be the one who doesn't need permission to care. Be the one who stays soft in a world that wants you hard. Be the one who speaks life into silence. Be the one who feels the weight and carries it anyway. Because that's what warriors do. They don't wait. They act. They build. They carry. And when the dust settles, when the world catches its breath and looks around, let your legacy be this: they made it because you didn't leave them behind.